Good evening. I made it, at least to this part. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting on May 12th, 2022. I call this meeting to order. All counselors are expected to be present this evening. I believe Counselor Lewis is on his way. We will start with a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance in English by Counselor Davis and in Spanish by myself. All right. This meeting is open to the public. Members of the public, city staff, and the media have the ability to view this meeting live through 3 different platforms: Zoom Webinar, GovTV, and YouTube Live. These live streams can be accessed from most smartphones, tablets, or computers for those watching on the live stream. Thank you for joining us. Tonight is the third of 3 public hearings the council is required to hold on the city's operating budget. Tonight's meeting will focus on the proposed committee substitutes and amendments. And tonight, it is the intent to send the budget as substituted and amended to the Monday, May 16th City Council meeting for adoption. I would like to interject that other amendments, although we're hoping not to have a lot of them, can still happen on Monday. Live public comment is not being taken this evening, but will be taken at the May 16th Council meeting. We will now go on to Agenda Item A, O24. Councilor Pena or Councilor Benton?
Madam Chair, O24 is amending the municipal solid waste rate table to incorporate the FY23 residential rate increase in the rate appendix. I move a do pass.
We have a motion and a second. Councilors, if you want to open.
I think
Councilor Pena and Councilor Benton, if you want to say anything about this to start, and then we'll open for questions and discussion.
oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't catch you. Go ahead,
You like-
Counselor. And then I'll interject. If
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Pena. Yes, this is an amendment to the solid waste fees. If anybody hasn't noticed the cleanup of encampments that's going on in the city, which I think most people appreciate. They may not like that we have to be doing it, but they do appreciate that we're trying to keep just public sidewalks clear, things of that nature, public rights of way. It's falling to a great degree on the solid waste department. And I think we as citizens, my feeling anyway, is that we've got to take our share of that and deal with that. I know there's a lot of discussion, well, we shouldn't have to be doing this. That's correct. We should not have to be doing this. I'm not going to argue that point. But we have to be doing it. And this department is shouldering a large percentage of the burden, and that's what this is about. I mean, we're all in this together. It's a huge challenge for our community, and I think Councilor Pena, I won't speak for her, she's going to speak for herself, but we both care a lot about this department. We both have a history with it, but it's not about that. It's about just covering the necessity of what has to be done. Thank you.
I apologize. Thank you, Councilor Benton, Madam Chair. And I'll just add to, just ditto what Councilor Benton stated. It's just important. I've worked with solid waste to clean up some encampments in my district and in other districts, and really, it's a heavy load to carry. So I think really being able to do this and really dedicate the folks necessary to create these teams, that when people call into 311, they know that there are these teams out there that are going to go out and be able to respond immediately as to where Director Whalen is, he's done an outstanding job of creating these teams within the solid waste division already, but to really grow it and get our city to where it needs to be, I hope the rest of the council supports this. So thank you.
Counselors, any questions? Counselor Sanchez?
I just have a comment, and to me, this sounds like raising taxes with city flush with cash. I think that the administration should be able to find some money to help out somewhere and get this done. First of all, these encampments are illegal, and we do have the laws in place to make sure that the de facto camps are taken care of by legal means. And so I just think that we shouldn't raise taxes on people.
Counselor Grout?
Madam Chair, I too agree that solid waste is an awesome division, and Director Wayland is doing a great job. I don't think that we should be asking our tax-paying citizens to pay more for these homeless, though. I think, like Councilor Sanchez said, there is money in the budget somewhere else, and I will be voting to increase them.
Counselors, any other discussion? Okay. I'm going to wait for Counselor Benton to get back before we go for a vote. All right, counselors, there's a motion and a second. So all those in favor, raise your hand and say yes. All those opposed? No. I didn't count that. 5-4 yes? Okay, so that passes on a 5-4 vote. Counselors, I believe there's a move, I'll move for immediate action on O24. There's a second from Counselor Davis. All those in favor, say yes. Yes. Any opposed? Okay. So immediate action with a 9-1 vote. We will go on to agenda item 7-2. I'm sorry, my apologies. Thank you. That passed for immediate action with a 7-2 vote. We will now go to agenda item B, R21. R21 is adjusting fund and program appropriations for the government of the City of Albuquerque, appropriating capital funds and authorizing changes to the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, appropriations for the purposes of pandemic response, pandemic recovery investments, and support for vulnerable populations. I move it do pass. There is a second from Councilor Pena and Feeblecorn. Thank you. Any questions or comments, councilors? Councilor Sanchez?
Yeah, I just need a little more explanation. Can somebody help me with a little more explanation in reference to it?
Yes, I'm going to defer to staff on that one for the ARPA bill. Mr. Ryle, do you want to do it, or Mr. Botka, or shall we get Mr. Muniz? I'll let you choose.
Madam Chair, Councilor Sanchez, we've got folks here. Are there specific questions on the bill that you, or would you like just a general presentation about the bill?
Well, when I look at it and I read it, I understand it, but I just want to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly. So I just was wanting a little bit of a breakdown in reference to how it all works. I'm a New York City councilor, and I just want to make sure that I'm voting on something that I understand 100%. Thank you.
Madam Chair and Councilor, let me have Ms. Yara talk about the bill, and then if you have some specific questions, we'll be happy to.
Thank you, Mr. Royal.
Madam Chair and Councilors, so this ARPA cleanup bill does a couple of things. So first of all, when we first received the ARPA funds last year, the guidance from the feds was kind of unclear. They were working on the guidance as we had already received the money. So at the time this council passed the first ARPA bill, we were under the impression that some of these projects could be funded through ARPA, that they were allowable. But once we got the final guidance from the federal government, we realized that some of these projects could not be funded by the ARPA bill. However, we were allowed to do what they call revenue replacement. So what this bill is doing is kind of swapping a lot of public safety salaries for those projects that were funded. So we're swapping ARPA money for general fund money to finish up those first tranche projects. And most of the projects have already been completed, are expended, or encumbered. So,
Councilor Sanchez?
Okay, so I'm just trying to understand it. Swapping ARPA for revenue replacement, or was it swapping ARPA for general fund money?
so the revenue replacement applies to the general fund. So they allowed us to use some of those funds, as revenue replacement in the general fund.
And is that all right by the federal government? to
Yes,
go ahead and
actually,
do-
this bill makes us more in compliance with the guidance that was given, the final guidance.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Good. All right, councilors, any other questions, comments? All right, councilors, please say yes and raise your hand. Yes? Any opposed? All right, I'd like to make a motion for immediate action. There's a second from Councilor Davis. All those in favor, raise your hand and say yes. Yes? Any opposed? All right, those both pass on a 9-0 vote. Moving on to agenda item C, O25, Councilors Bassan, Benton, and Lewis. Councilors Benton or Councilor Lewis, do you want to go?
Madam Chair, I make just a request that we move this to later in the meeting. Can we, if the launch is okay with that?
Sure.
We'll just move it out till after the budget bill.
Okay, we will go ahead and we will move that to the end of the meeting and come back to it. So then we're going to skip agenda item D as well because they go hand in hand. And we're going to move on to agenda item E as R24, appropriating funds for operating the government of the city of Albuquerque for fiscal year 2023, beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending July 30th, 2023. Adjusting fiscal year 2022 appropriations and appropriating capital funds. I move a do pass. There's multiple seconds. This is where the fun gets started. Counselors, there's going to be amendments, and we have questions, but I'm going to want to move the committee substitute for R24. So I make a motion to approve R24, the committee substitute. There's multiple seconds for that. So let me catch up in my notes.
So point of order, Madam Chair.
Mhm.
So this is for the substitution, not to approve. Thank you.
Okay. There's a lot up here. So first, I'm going to make a motion for committee amendment AA.
Madam Chair, you'll need to take a vote on the committee substitute that
Oh.
was just moved first.
I guess that makes sense. All right. Counselors, any questions or comments about the committee sub? All right, all those in favor, raise your hand and say yes. Yes. Any opposed? All right, that passes. All right, so now, it's been a good day. All right, so now I would like to make a motion to approve Amendment AA On page 3, line 15, entitled Affordable Housing, decrease the amount by $3 million. Is there a second? Thank you. I'm moving this initial cleanup amendment to the committee substitute bill we distributed last evening. As we know and have seen, the budget development process is a big lift with many moving parts. This amendment adjusts to make sure the budget balances and more clearly addresses the appropriations made in this bill at this time. Councilor Davis?
Madam Chair, I wonder if you or staff could clarify how much other housing voucher money remains in the budget if this amendment passes?
Mr. Muniz?
Chairperson, Councilor Davis, by removing this amount, it would leave an already appropriated amount from the mayor's budget of $5 million in recurring vouchers. We would then have added $6 million in affordable housing vouchers recurring. We also included in the substitute $2 million of non-recurring vouchers. And the mayor's budget proposal also included $3 million of non-recurring vouchers. So we're talking $16 million of affordable housing vouchers between recurring and non-recurring.
Councilor Davis, and then Councilor Benton.
Yeah, and thank you, Madam Chair. Just one follow-up, Mr. Muniz. Thank you. That was good math in your head. I appreciate that. How much, if you recall, I was looking in our book and I just didn't see it quickly, and maybe Ms. Yara can remind me, how much did we appropriate in FY22? In other words, what's the delta between the current year and the FY23 if this amendment passes? Carol.
Chairperson, Councilor Davis, I believe the amount stayed the same, $8 million from last year. I believe it was also $5 million recurring and $3 million in non-recurring.
There's Lisa. Thank you, and I know Councilor Benton has another question. I might ask Ms. Huval if she knows, Madam Chair, if it's possible. I know she just joined us. If she could remind us exactly how much money was appropriated for housing vouchers in FY22 versus 23. I see Mr. Davis looking at it for me. What I'm trying to ensure while we're having this debate is that we are at least maintaining our current level while we have some other housing amendments coming in the capital proposal and others, so that we can ensure that we're not reducing. But thank you, Madam Chair. I'll wait on that response.
Councilor Benton.
Yeah, related question for Ms. Duval. We're mixing apples and persimmons or something, because we're talking about recurring vouchers in the same bucket as permanent vouchers, recurring vouchers, which is year to year something that we can count on for supporting vouchers for this clear need, which is way more than the money we're talking about. Probably 3 times the money we're talking about tonight is the actual need for these vouchers. So balancing this budget on the back of that is an issue for me. But when I hear we're talking about recurring vouchers with non-recurring vouchers in the same discussion, and then we're even talking about capital money, which is entirely separate, can you describe what the difference is in those? Where are they going, and what is the extent of the need, Ms. Duval?
Chairwoman Bassan, Councilor Ben, I think so, and I apologize for being a couple minutes late, so hopefully I'm answering the question. So in our FY22 budget, we have about $5.3 million in reoccurring money for supportive housing vouchers, supportive housing voucher programs. Our reoccurring dollars we use to fund what we call permanent supportive housing. This is rental assistance plus case management services that is not time limited. It's a proven model for helping folks who are chronically homeless, been homeless for a long time with like significant disabilities, find housing and keep their housing. In our FY22 budget, we also got $2 million in general fund money. I should clarify that $5.3 million reoccurring is general fund. We also got $2 million in our FY22 budget, non-reoccurring for housing vouchers. When the money is non-reoccurring, we set it up as rapid rehousing, which is time-limited rental assistance and supportive services, usually 1 to 2 years. and helps folks that, are able to get back onto their feet within that time period. And we set it up that way with non-reoccurring because, we can't depend on the money year after year. They're both needed, but when we look at across our community, folks that are in encampments, really living outside unsheltered, really permanent supportive housing is the proven model. And then in our FY23 budget, there's $5.3 million in reoccurring funding for supportive housing voucher programs, and then an additional $3 million in non-reoccurring funding for housing vouchers. So I hope that answers the question.
If I may, Madam Chair. So to be clear, the 5.3 recurring is for supportive housing only. These are not affordable housing vouchers.
Well, to
they are,
clarify
but they're
terms, I
in
guess
that
in my
category.
mind, I think of these as supportive housing vouchers because it's all of these funds, all of these contracts. They're providing the housing vouchers, the rental assistance, as well as the supportive services. So we are talking about the same thing: housing vouchers, supportive housing vouchers.
So if I don't need supportive housing, I just need a housing voucher?
Currently,
Because I'm 30% of median income or below. Can I utilize these?
Chairwoman Bassan, Councilor Benton, no, that is not the city. The current vouchers funded through the city of Albuquerque are supportive housing vouchers intended for folks experiencing homelessness, rental assistance plus case management. We are not currently funding just a housing voucher program.
Right, which is the intent of what I've been talking about.
Okay.
Is going beyond just supportive housing is extremely important, emergency housing, but we have a need, a demonstrated need, 30 million or more. I think we've calculated in the Homeless Coordinating Council in terms of long-term need for housing vouchers across the board. And I think we categorize that in terms of 30% and below of median income. Now, whether you've got a supportive need within your housing or not, if you're 34% below, 30% or more below median income, you are close to homelessness. Because under the housing market the way it is now, it ain't gonna happen. I mean, without vouchers, you're looking at substandard housing or nothing as a person under 30% of median income for the most part. So this is what I've been working for. I've been very clear about this has been my priority. I'm not asking for anything else. In the capital side, I'm not asking for anything for my district. Nothing, zero. Affordable housing and affordable housing operations are two entirely different things. Capital, building affordable housing, or buying whatever we want to call it, buying anything, buying a safe outdoor space lot or something like that. You can do that with affordable housing money. But we're talking about the ongoing costs of keeping people housed in this city. And we're going to pay the price if we don't focus on it. And I strongly oppose balancing any budget on the back of that need, that strong need. And this is only a third of what's really needed. Thank you.
Councillor Lewis and then Councillor Jones.
And Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to table this amendment, just to give us some time and then get back to it.
There's a motion to table and a second. I do have a question. If we were to table this, given the circumstances with the balancing of the budget, is it acceptable to proceed with other amendments?
Chair Bassan, I believe we can pass the other amendments that we have on the table and then come back to this one as long as we deal with it before the budget is fully passed.
Okay, thank you. So any other questions about tabling this amendment? Councilor Jones, did you want to, okay. All those in favor of tabling this amendment, raise your hand and say yes. Yes. Any opposed? All right, we will table that and come back to it later. I would imagine staff will remind me, but I don't think I'm going to forget this one.
Madam
All
President,
right. Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Real.
I'm going to just maybe add a finer point to this. If we are passing amendments that are not neutral going forward, we're just going to compound the issue you're trying to cure with this amendment. And so I just want to make sure that at some point, we're going to have to reconcile this. And that's my concern with continuing with amendments if we can't reconcile up front. However, if the council wants to proceed with that, we will probably have to take a few minutes somewhere in this meeting to do some of the adjustment and come back with some solution.
Counselor Lewis and then Counselor Davis.
So, Madam Chair, that would be under the assumption that we would have to reconcile it specifically with that amendment, and clearly we do not have to, or there could be other options, and I don't believe that that is the only option to reconcile the budget through that specific source right there. And so, for that being, I think we could pass a number of amendments, or in the meantime, till we get that figured out.
Counselor Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I know we just tabled this, but Mr. Real, Ms. Yara, Mr. Davis, and our staff, I wonder if you could help us a little bit in the meantime. If y'all could put some heads together. For the folks following along or not following along, what we're trying to do is in this very big budget is to solve basically a $3 million structural deficit in recurring funding. This is one option. As Councilor Lewis says, there are plenty of others. I think he proposes some different options that I would. But instead of doing it as a $3 million tranche, Mr. Real, Ms. Yara, would you work with our staff and see if we could identify some places? I'm thinking of the Gibson Medical Center, for example, where operations are fully funded in the budget, but where programs may not be coming online on July 1st. Maybe we can take a little bit here, a little bit there, and come up with a budget, a piece that would delay some programs, or where we know we're not going to have staff because we just funded new positions, for example. Would you see if you could find us a list of that's not housing vouchers, just to give us an option?
Madam Chair and Councilor Davis, we can certainly do that and look through these. And I would also add, Councilor Lewis is correct. I mean, if there's other amendments in here that restructure this debt, that's great. But if they're not, just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page across the board, that we do have a structural issue here that we've got to address. So, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And recognizing, we've got to deal with this, unfortunately, I have to ask for another point of order and ask for Mr. Melendez perhaps to help us with this. That is, we have a rule that states that amendments must be on the dais by 5. So we've effectively made a rule for ourselves that means that we cannot adjust this sort of thing on the fly. Am I correct?
Madam Chair, Councilor Benton, yes, for every rule there's context and I think potential exceptions, and I'm not sure that an exception needs to apply here, but the context is that Amendment AA was on the dais at that time. That's the amendment that has been moved for tabling at this point. If a solution is found for Amendment AA, it's not uncommon for the council to entertain amendments to the amendment. So in that instance, you would still be discussing a concept that was on the dais at the appropriate time.
Understood. So I guess this amendment AA that targets affordable housing could be a vehicle for some alternative. Is that what you're saying?
Madam Chair, Councilor Benton, yes. So if a different area to look for funds to shore up the budget this evening is preferred, then it would be the vehicle by simply changing the location from which that $3 million would be taken.
Okay, fair enough. Councilors, we ought to look at some of those rules going forward. These were reactive to certain things that happened a few years back, and I'm not sure they serve us well. But thanks for that clarification, Chris.
All right. So, and for the record, also, Councilor Benton, I am letting you know right now, I absolutely am open to figuring out a better way for Amendment AA. So, moving on to Amendment 1. So AA is really 1? Okay. So, Councilor Benton, you will have Amendment 2.
I'm not sure of the timeliness of this and whether I should be moving it. I'll describe it to you, counselors, and then if it's the will of the council to discuss it, I'm open to discussion. But this was written when I thought we had a $1 million shortfall in the original request that I had of $10 million for affordable housing vouchers, and this would appropriate $825,000 from the field operations line under the fire department, which is a contract which has not been even, I guess it's just begun negotiation, yet we're discussing, or we have in the budget to, in the substitute, to add $825,000 for fire department raises. Now, I'm not opposed to those raises, but we have not begun to negotiate that contract yet. Why would we tip our hand and start saying, well, here's a bunch of money, you guys can now start from there and start negotiating from there? I don't support that kind of approach to our union contracts. There's a specific process for that, and this looks to me like an inside kind of discussion that I certainly wasn't a part of and would not be a part of. But so this would stop that for the time being. If there's a contract negotiated, we can discuss that contract after it's negotiated and fund it, and in a position to do that as the council. But I can't support that. And this was before I knew that there was a $3 million deficit in essentially we're saying for now affordable housing. So that's what this is about. I'm not going to move this amendment, councilors. This would have been amendment number 2. I'm not going to move it at this time, but I just wanted everyone to be aware of it.
Councilor Lewis? Did you? Okay. Okay. So I'm going to take a moment to back up just a smidge, because in all of my chaotic glory, I forgot to tell you all a little bit of how I got to where I ended up with the committee sub, and I wanted to, for the counselor's sake and for the public, give a little summary of some of the mentality behind some of the things that I did. So my apologies that it took me till now to remember. So in addition to some sponsorships changing, there's going to be some amendments later because we ended up with some technical cleanups and some things got left out that were not supposed to. But any counselor that ended up communicating to me any of the sponsorships that they really valued and that they wanted to make sure stayed in, I made sure to keep and I made sure to add in. So in addition to that, if we haven't been hearing from certain groups and nonprofits, as unfortunate as it is and as hard of a call as it may be, I think that it's also very important that we were able to figure out a way for those that have been being proactive in their request for support. We had to find a way to figure out where the funding would come from for that. So some got cut this year based off of if a counselor didn't advocate for them or if we hadn't heard from them, to my knowledge. That was the mentality behind that. There was an addition of one-time funding, and Councilor Benton, I also can see a lot of where you come from with what you were saying just now with AFR. I do think that it's been something I've said for the last couple weeks of how do we move forward with the AFR budget if we haven't had a negotiated contract signed and agreed upon, which is difficult for me because I'm not legally allowed to participate in those discussions with collective bargaining. None of us are. So I did what I think makes sense, and that is to add in $1 million for AFR, because I do think there is some parity that needs to happen with all of APD and AFR. So there's one-time funding for that. Changes that were made to the recurring funding, we added in several different things, including housing vouchers. The intention was for a lot more than where we're at potentially right now. But across the board, I added in a 3% COLA increase. And in the mayor's proposed budget, there was a 2% increase. So What I'm proposing in the committee substitute is overall a 5% increase for city employees, including AFR. And then in addition to that, since I'm talking AFR as well, I'm going to wrap that one up. But the $825,000 was for an additional increase of 3% to their salaries beginning in February. So that this year, starting in February, they would have gotten a total of 8% increase. The tiered retention incentive, pardon me, is something that is one-time funding that is hopefully going to help most people here in Albuquerque. It's a tiered, layered system of giving out bonuses anywhere, not a bonus, it's not a bonus. I'm sorry, it's a retention incentive. A retention incentive anywhere from $500 to $2,000 depending on the amount of wages that employee makes. So in short, anyone making over $100,000 will not get one. And anyone making either less than or right around $15 per hour will get the $2,000, which would also mean that it would equate to, for that level, it would equate to more than 3% raise for this 1 year, in addition to the 5% COLA. So I was trying to figure out a way to achieve how to get a cost of living increase for those that are really passionate about it and that deserve it. So some people will get up to 8%, some people won't. I think that this is the best way that I could come up with to find a balance of figuring how to make that happen. I did enter in some position deletions. There were a lot of vacancies. Some positions were over 700 days old. The Metro and Transit Security positions, there's quite a few of those that are vacant right now. And although I highly value those departments, I think that we need to make sure that if we have the vacancies, how do we make sure that the funding is there for other needs in our city? And if those end up getting filled, the remaining positions get filled, and we need to discuss this mid-year, I think that that's the whole goal, is to really reevaluate discussing bringing stuff in, but once we fill it up. There's other positions that were deleted, and the cannabis program for environmental health, upon speaking with other counselors, I think that it seemed apparent to me that there was an overall consensus that we don't currently need that at this moment in time. With there was the expression that there really hasn't been a plan quite developed yet, and this is so new that we have code enforcement and we already have people that can get us started with the cannabis program for now. And again, if we get a plan and we need to revisit that next year, I think that that's definitely something we should value and look forward to. The surrender fees for animal welfare were removed. I think that, and I agree, I mean, I'm worried that a lot of people are going to end up just dropping off their animal because they don't want to pay $20 or even be asked to pay $20. So that was a big one that got taken out. Some combined PIO outreach, which was, it's my understanding that a lot of that was for COVID and making sure reopening techniques, and I don't think we need those as much anymore. So that was some of it too. And the last big one is for those that see that the Albuquerque Community Safety Department was cut to funding for 8 months. I think that they're going to get staffed up. I think that they've expressed that, but I also don't think that they're going to get fully staffed July 1st with what they asked. So in the time it takes for them to partially staff, they'll have that budget, and then by the time they fully staff, they'll have what's left of that budget by the end of the year. And I think that that's going to be able to work out. So that's me summarizing in a nutshell all of the work that we've been putting into this, and I hope that that offers some clarity. I'm happy to answer any questions as we proceed with it. Councilor Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. How much total in the sub is designated for AFR raises that would be negotiated? It sounded like it was coming from several different places in the substitutes. So what would be the total amount that this is proposing?
Sure. Councilor Lewis, I'm going to answer that, but then I'm going to get you the actual number from our numbers guru who's going to crunch those. But total for AFR is they get the overall 5% increase between the 2% from the mayor's proposed budget and the 3% I added in. An additional $825,000 that will begin in February, which will increase their wage another 3%. So it will be for 5 months. and then a one-time funding of $1 million.
Okay, Madam Chair, so what is the total of that for that? These are funds that we're assuming would be negotiated. What are the
Mr.
total?
Muniz?
Chairperson, Council Lewis, if my math is correct, I believe that equates to an annual cost of just over 1.9 million
1.9 million,
for the
okay.
3%.
So, Madam Chair, I just listened to Councilor Benton, and I just don't ever remember ever doing anything like this in a budget process where we're kind of preempting a negotiated something that happens really beyond the purview of what the council does. So, I've never seen that before, and I also think that this could, if you're talking about AFR and really wanting them, if you happen to be the union part of this, I mean, this actually might limit their ability to be able to. It's something that could be used in negotiations to say, well, the council only appropriated this amount for you this year, and so that could be used in that way. It could also be used again on the administration side to maybe negotiate far beyond maybe what should be the case. But again, all that to say, and the reason why I'm even having a hard time describing that is because that's really not the purview of what the council does in those negotiations. And so that part of it, I realize the intent. I mean, I think the intent. I'm not certainly being critical of that at all. I just don't know if this is the right place for, in this budget process, the right place to be designating money to be going toward negotiated salary raises.
Thank you, Councilor Lewis, and I guess we're going to see as we move through these amendments how everything works out, and then we'll revisit that last amendment at the end where there might be an opportunity for change if that's your desire.
Yeah, and Madam Chair, I'm certainly not mixing together the amendment that we tabled. I mean, I think just separately, I wanted to, I guess, share that.
Thank you. Okay, so just to confirm, Councilor Benton, we're going to move on from your amendment right now? Okay. So we are going to move on to amendment number 3. On page 2, line 21, entitled Community Events, decrease the amount by $60,000. On page 4, line 3, entitled Strategic Support, decrease the amount by $40,000. On page 6, line 11, entitled Administrative Support, decrease the amount by $30,000. On page 2, line 21, entitled Community Events, increase the amount by $45,000. On page 5, line 31, entitled Parks Management, decrease the amount by $200,000. I would like to move amendment number 3.
Madam Chair, it gets a little confusing once in a while with multiple amendments, but Councilor Benton discussed an amendment, but he did not move it. That would have been Amendment 2 if he would have, so this is actually Amendment 2.
Thank you, Mr. Melendrez. So I would like to move amendment number 2. And there is a second. So thank you. This amendment is, we found through some of our double checking, triple checking today that some of the sponsorships that were put into the committee sub were duplicated or needed to be added per the requests of the counselors as mentioned before. So this is making sure that we adjust for that so that we don't have the duplicated one-time sponsorships in there. And then it also places 2 sponsorships back in that were removed by accident. Counselor Lewis and then Counselor Grout.
Madam Chair, so it took me a while to figure this out because it's just we handled this in a different way, I guess, in years past. Where and it's just a new thing, nothing wrong with it. Where I think we would have certain desires to send money to certain organizations like this, and then we'd have an internal meeting, I think, and we would decide on it and go from there. And this is probably a better process, but sounds like it's a better process that you all probably proposed while I was gone. But because of that, I guess I just wanted to ask a question. Is there still some time? We pass this tonight. We can possibly suggest some other amendments to specifically some of the sponsorships between now and Monday. I think, Ms. Muniz, you said there might be some room in here to do that without really taking away something else.
Mr. Muniz?
Chairperson, Councilor Lewis, sans the $3 million issue we were discussing earlier, yes, there would be an opportunity to make some changes to Mondays if it on council Monday.
Okay. Any other questions or comments, counselors? Counselor Benton?
Yes, so is this park management is that also a double entry?
Uh,
or
Miss,
something?
Counselor Benton, that's the department that the ones that are listed below got appropriated to, is my understanding. Mr. Muniz? If you want to clarify?
Chairperson, Council Benton. Yes, this is one of the items that we duplicated. So as it stands, the mayor's proposed budget sent over a line item for Tom Bollock Park for $200,000. That was a carryover from last year, which also appropriated $200,000.
Okay, thank you.
We also included $100,000 of new money, and so we realized we double counted, so we were removing $200,000.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments, counselors? All right, there is a motion and a second for amendment number 2. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yes.
Yes.
Yes. All those, any opposed? All right, that passes on a 9-0 vote. Moving on to, we're going to see if I can finally get a hold of this. Moving on to amendment number 3. On page 3, line 15, entitled Council Services, decrease the amount by $111,000. I would like to make a motion to approve amendment number 3. There's a second from Councilor Davis. This amendment is a technical amendment to the committee substitute to decrease the personnel budget for council services. Any discussion or questions? Councilor Benton?
This one asked to Director, Council Services. We know that you know the personnel budget is always fluid, and that oftentimes we will put out small contracts to help us backfill those needs. This doesn't preclude that, does it?
Madam Chair, Councilor Benton, no. The personnel budget for council services and the professional services amount is in the budget, and this was a line that sort of discussed an individual need that was already packaged within the broader number, and so it's just making that reconciliation.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilors, any other questions or discussion? All right, there's a motion and a second for the approval of amendment number 3. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yes. Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? That passes on a 9-0 vote. Moving on to amendment number 4. I would like to move amendment number 4 on page 5, line 23, entitled Office of Inspector General, decrease the amount by $100,000. On page 5, line 25, entitled Internal Audit, decrease the amount by $100,000. On page 4, line 10, entitled Office of Management and Budget, increase the amount by $160,000. And on page 5, line 12, entitled Strategic Support, increase the amount by $175,000. Do I have a second? Second from Councilor Davis. This amendment is a technical amendment to the committee substitute bill to adjust the personnel budget for the Office of Inspector General, Internal Audit, Office of Management and Budget, and Municipal Development. Councilor Benton?
Yeah, a question for the, what's the aspect of municipal development in this?
Mr. Muniz?
Chairperson, Councilor Benton, we discovered one of the vacant positions that we proposed to cut was the offer was already given to an individual to take a deputy director position with municipal development. So we had to put it back on the books.
Okay, and is that the strategic support?
Chairperson and Councilor Benton, yes. That's the program we have it put now. It's possible that it could be moved to a different program, but.
Thank you.
Councilor Benton, just to clarify, that's the deputy director of DMD. Councilor Sanchez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question. These are the Office of the Inspector General and the Internal Audit, I think, are very, very important. They're actually not tied to the administration, so I think that they would be a very valuable tool. Can we get an explanation of why we're reducing?
Councilor Sanchez, I had proposed to increase the budget, and then I've learned some other information that leads me to believe that the budget won't be necessary due to the potential for some future changes within the department. And so I really think that at mid-year, if we still need this position, it would be better to go ahead and appropriate it then. But the position for Deputy Director of DMD had been filled, even though I didn't believe and understand that it was at the time. So this was a way to make sure that we kind of reinstate what was there originally. Not to say I devalue IA or IG at all either.
Okay, thank you.
Counselors, any other questions or comments? All right, so there is a motion and a second for amendment number 4. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yes. Yes. Anyone opposed? All right, that passes on a 9-0 vote. Amendment number 5 is Counselor Pena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On page 2, line 1, entitled Community Events, increase the amount by 50,000. The explanation is this amendment restores sponsorship funding for the Hispanic Heritage Day for 50,000 from available fund balance. The amount was, I was told, was mistakenly removed from the committee sub creation. I move it to pass.
I will second that. Any questions or comments? And just to go in advance, this is one of those that was a request by counselor and it somehow got mixed into the wrong column, so we ended up accidentally cutting it rather than continuing to fund it, which was not the intention. Any other questions, counselors? There's a motion and a second for approval of amendment number 5. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yes. Okay, that passes. Do I have to ask for a no if it's 9? No? Okay. So that passes on a 9-0 vote. All right. Moving on to amendment number 6 on page 2. I would like to move amendment number 6. It's on page 2, line 21, entitled Community Events, increase the amount by 3,000. On page 4, line 3, entitled Strategic Support, increase the amount by 10,000. On page 2, line 21, entitled Community Events, decrease the amount by 75,000. This, the explanation is this is adding and removing sponsorship amounts to the respective departments. The amounts are appropriated from and reverted to the fund balance. Is there a second? Okay, thank you, Councilor Fiebel-Corn. And just before Councilor Benton, I'll get to you on that. This is another one. My apologies for not being perfect on this committee sub, but this is another one that I was told that one of the reduction on here was separate from the increase that was added on through the counselor's request, and then the additions were requested to increase, and they weren't increased on the committee sub, so I wanted to make sure to add that in. Counselor Benton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So with regard to the outpost, that is something we've funded regularly every year, the Summerfest events. Is there someone from Arts and Culture, or was this another kind of a double entry issue? Mr. Muniz?
Mr. Muniz.
Chairperson, Councilor Benton, yes, it's exactly what it was. It was a double entry issue. It wasn't to remove any funding for those events.
Remain for Summerfest.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Counselor Benton, we made sure to leave $60,000 in there for Outpost Summerfest. Counselor Davis, did you?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to ask about there's another amendment in here that all relates to Pride, which would zero out the funding for the Pride Festival. I have some concerns. Maybe if APD can help me a little bit. The Pride originally had banned some city departments from participating in their event, although we've been a sponsor for some time. I just wonder if APD could give us an update on their conversations with the organization. It just concerns me that we might be funding an organization that doesn't want the city to participate. And so this would increase their funding, this amendment would. I would be okay with that if we've reconciled that with their differences with the city. But if the chief is here, I wonder if you'd allow him just to give us a 2-second update. Otherwise, I'd like to maybe table this, have a quick conversation about how we might be able to address those issues.
Okay. Good evening, Chief.
Chief, sorry to put you on the spot. I know you and I have been working a little bit with Albuquerque Pride, and to get an APD's been supportive of their organization and their mission for a while, but could you give us an update on sort of the conversations around participation?
Madam Chair, Councilor Davis, they did set us up for a meeting, and what occurred during their last meeting is our ambassador officer had his grandmother pass away, so he wasn't able to attend the meeting, and we weren't able to get a fill-in at the last moment like that. And we are scheduled to go to a meeting to try to see if we could be part of the event, and that meeting is scheduled this coming Sunday, I believe, at 1 o'clock. And I do plan to attend that meeting at 1 with Chase.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I just want to point, I'm happy to vote for this amendment. I think it's a good organization. We're excited to have them back. We're always excited to have them in the parade and Pride Fest in District 6 coming up next month. This would actually be for next year. And so I wonder, Chief, if you could just give us an update about that meeting before Monday. I'm happy to vote for this today, but I would be concerned if the city was funding an organization that chose to to take our money, but not allow our city employees to participate. And so I hope that gets resolved, and I want to reserve the right to revisit this on Monday if we haven't resolved it, and perhaps put it in some contingent or reserve until we can get that sorted out.
Sounds like a good plan. Counselors, any other questions, comments? All right, there is a motion and a second for amendment number 6. All those in favor, please say yes. Raise your hand. Yes. Any opposed? All right, that passes on a 9-0 vote. Amendment number 7, Counselor Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amendment number 7 makes several adjustments funding council-sponsored projects with no net change in the overall budget. The details are available in the budget, and if the chair requests, I'm happy to read through those in better detail. But essentially, this just reallocates funding, as we've always done, with council-sponsored projects based on new needs and removing organizations that completed their programs from last year. Would you like me to read through the whole thing, or are we sufficient, Madam Chair? I'm happy to do it.
If you wouldn't mind, I think for those that are wanting to watch and whatnot, and then I know I have a clarifying question.
Sure. Very briefly, Madam Chair, I'm happy to do that. The amendment would, on page 2, line 21, Untitled Community Events, increase that amount by $8,000. On page 3, line 14, entitled Council Services, increased by $60,000. On page 3, line 17, entitled Economic Development, increased by $25,000. On page 3, line 32, entitled Gateway Operations, decreased by $100,000. On page 4, line 3, entitled Strategic Support, decreased by $25,000. And on page 5, line 33, entitled Strategic Support, increased by $30,000. Madam Chair, this, as you mentioned earlier, the original budget was just a copy-paste from last year until we were able to make those adjustments. For this continues our participation in the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, for which we have an MOU from the city to partner with the criminal justice partners as a state mandate. Ciclovia is an event that occurs annually. This returns them back because they're able to do full-time events. It has an adjustment for Albuquerque Pride, as we mentioned. Nob Hill Supplemental Parking Program. This is a pilot program in the Economic Development Department to encourage and assist employees in returning to work in busy corridors to supplement parking so that we can free up parking for Central Avenue customers to get back to our small businesses. It also makes adjustments for TEDx, ABQ Gateway, and the TGRC. It increases for Pollinator Project, which is a program that's been funded to increase our pollinators in the city. The Food is Free program, which is helping to provide food, free and healthy food for families in need.
Thank you, Councilor Davis. The Pollinator Project is in addition to the $70,000 put into the budget and the committee sub.
Madam Chair, I wasn't aware of the sponsors, and so I would be happy if you'd be okay to pass this tonight because it does balance, and be happy to revisit those funds with you before Monday if there's already an appropriation that meets their need.
Sounds good. If we can make sure that we make a note of revisiting that and not forgetting, there was the $70,000 put in for Pollinator Project per councilor's request.
Right.
So
that's great.
Councilor
Thank you for doing
Feeblecorn.
I just want to point out that we could always give more to the pollinator project. So 100K is not, so 70, I believe, would get us to around 12 pollinator gardens around the city. And so adding more on would not be a bad thing.
Councilors, any questions, comments? All right, so there is a motion and there's not a motion. Councilor Feeblecorn seconded that motion. Thank you. There's a motion and a second now. All those in favor, please say yes and raise your hand. Yes. Any opposed? All right, that passes on a 9-0 vote. Moving on to Committee Sub Amendment 8. Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Committee Amendment Number 8. Committee Amendment Number 8 on page 6, line 21, entitled Basic Services, increases that amount by $50,000. This is the coffee amendment. This amendment increases senior affairs budget by $50,000 to provide free coffee for seniors from available fund balances. My apologies to my colleagues for pulling this out of the budget ahead of time. We've done a lot of work and we've seen some news coverage and received some comments. and would be happy to receive any input from the administration. But this would allow us to fully fund the coffee budget in the senior affairs program for free coffee in all of our senior services, with an addition that would accommodate for what we think would be more coffee if it was free. And so that solves that problem, and we won't get any more emails about it.
There's a motion and a second.
And thumbs up from the administration.
I'm glad you remembered this because thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Rao.
I must say that this has been the most unusual amendment that I've seen in my tenure, where we propose a cut and we actually get a raise out of this. So,
Happy to help.
thank you very much, Counselor.
Director Sanchez, I look forward, I hope if this passes, to coming to visit you for coffee soon.
The coffee amendment.
All right, counselors. There is a motion and a second for the coffee amendment, AKA number 8. The second was Counselor Grout.
Somebody help me with this.
No, she did. She did earlier. Thank you. All those in favor of amendment number 8, raise your hand and say yes. 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 Any opposed? All right. So here's to coffee. All right. Amendment number 9. Thank you. I would like to move amendment number 9 on page 4, line 3, entitled Strategic Support, increase the amount by $184,000. On page 4, line 1, entitled Homeless Support Service, increase the amount by $50,000. This amendment is adding $184,000 to Family and Community Services for emergency items as needed for individuals, and it also adds $50,000 designated to the New Mexico Coalition to End Homelessness to run an ID assistance program. Do I have a second? There are several seconds. Thank you, counselors. Any questions? Counselor Davis.
Madam Chair, I just want to say, no questions, but I don't know who proposed the ID assistance program, but I have to say it is one of the biggest hurdles we deal with in trying to get people enrolled, and every organization has a different process and a different way. I've spent the last 2 weeks grateful with Family and Community Services working with one particular individual to navigate that process. This is fabulous. I don't know whose idea it was, but I'm so excited that you included it in this amendment.
Thank you, Counselor Davis. I wish I could claim it as my own. However, I'm going to go ahead and give it to Elizabeth Ogeen. Thank you. Any questions or comments, counselors? All right, so all those in favor of amendment number 9, please raise your hand and say yes. Yes. All right, that passes on a 9-0 vote. Moving on to amendment number 10, Counselor Pena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amendment number 10 is on page 12, after line 17, add Arts and Cultural Department sponsorship events, Somos Albuquerque, for $40,000. This an FY22 budget cleanup amendment. It proposes to fund the Somos Albuquerque event for an additional $40,000 from the available fund balance from 2022. The Somos Albuquerque event was budgeted at $10,000 for 2022. This amendment would offer a total of $50,000 in one-time funding, and this is for this year's budget. It's actually a community festival that's put on by a bunch of young entrepreneurs throughout the city, and they're really doing a really good job in terms of engaging the youth. And I'd like to say that they actually do some community surveys as part of the event they have, similar to the West Fest does. So, and they use that data to help inform the community, similar to other events that we have in the city. So,
is there a second, counselors? Second from Counselor Feeblecorn. Counselor Benton.
I have a question for the sponsor. So I know that this was a successful event. I know the pandemic may have put a dent in it, but prior to the pandemic, and it was at 10,000 previously. Well, I guess it was 10,000 last year. Did they actually have the event last year?
well, actually, no, they didn't have the event. So what had happened was it was at a higher amount, and then last year, by default, it went back to that original amount of 10,000. And when the pandemic lifted, they really just didn't get in the request last year. So then now this will cover this year's event that's going to be happening, I think, in the next 2 weeks.
So this is on par with what we were spending before on it? Counselor.
previous to last year was, they got 10,000, but previous to that, I don't remember the total amount. I think it was 40 or 50. Is that correct? Somebody?
It was in that ballpark.
Okay.
Counselor Benton?
But I think that answers the question. If we can look up what it was previously, that would be of interest.
Counselor Davis?
Yeah, and thank you, Councilor Benton. I just want to clarify something. Although the event last year was not in person, there was a virtual online event to support local artists and expand their programs digitally. And so I want to be clear that we didn't fund a program that didn't happen last year. It was just greatly diminished, and I appreciate that.
Madam Chair, thank you, Councilor Davis, for the correction.
Counselors, any other questions or comments? All right, Counselor Pena to close.
Urge your support.
Counselors, all those in favor of amendment number 10, please raise your hand and say yes. Yes. Any opposed? That passes on a 9-0 vote. Moving on to amendment number 11. Counselor Fiebelkorn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an amendment that would be number 11. It is on page 12 after line 10. Add the following: GF transfer to Capital Acquisition Fund 305 for $200,000. And on page 13 after line 23, add the following: Parts and Development, Tom Bollock Park, transfer from Fund 110, $200,000. This is to fund the Tom Bollock Park capital improvement project.
Counselor Fiebelkorn has a motion. Counselor Pena with a second. Counselors, any questions? I have a question. In one of the amendments earlier, we removed $200,000 because of the duplication for this. And now can we just make sure that you explain?
Yes,
so I can
Madam
keep
Chair.
up with it, please.
So the project actually needs $300,000. So this $200,000 transfer is part of that, and then we wanted to keep the $100,000 in sponsorship. So this plus what you've already done will keep us whole.
If you say so. So yeah, okay, good, good, good. Any other questions or comments? All right, counselors, those in favor of amendment number 11, please raise your hand and say yes. Yes. Any opposed? All right, that passes on a 9-0 vote. Moving on to amendment number 12, Counselor Sanchez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On page 12, after line 3, insert the following: Section 3, in the event that actual operating revenues in fiscal year 2023 exceed projected revenues approved in the fiscal year 2023 operating budget, the additional amounts are hereby reserved in the operating reserve fund for the city of Albuquerque for fiscal year 2023. Any such funds will be unreserved only upon appropriation by City Council. An explanation: this amendment adds language to the operating budget bill indicating that any additional revenues earned during fiscal year 2023 will be placed in the operating reserve fund. Funds will be unreserved upon a City Council appropriation.
There's a motion?
Motion.
Okay, and a second from Counselor Lewis. Any questions? Counselor Davis.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to ask our finance staff just to clarify for me, and thank you, Counselor Sanchez, for bringing this. What happens without this, right? If we have additional revenue, it still is not appropriated without us, but this amendment simply puts it in reserve instead of leaving it in the general fund as unappropriated. I'm fine with this. It seems like a cleaner way to do it, but what's the practical difference?
Mr. Rail?
Madam Chair and Councilor Davis, typically with any revenue that comes in, after we pass the budget, it does go to the unappropriated reserve. And Councilor Sanchez's amendment would require us to come to you anyway, because that's what we can't appropriate any money on the executive side. So I think it just reiterates what we are doing anyway.
Great. Sounds good. Thanks.
Any other questions, comments, counselors? All right, all those in favor of amendment number 12, please raise your hand and say yes. All right, that passes. That passes on a 9-0 vote. Moving on to amendment number 13. This is myself by request. On page 8, after line 30, add the language: an appropriation automated speed enforcement fund 289. Municipal Development Speed Enforcement for $7.7 million. This amount is designated for municipal traffic safety programs, including the Vision Zero initiative. I make a motion to approve amendment number 13. And there's a second from Councilor Feeblecorn. This amendment adds appropriation from revenue collected in the newly created Automated Speed Enforcement Program Fund to support the speed enforcement contract, personnel associated with the program, and operational needs. Per NMSA 31817, the city can use its portion of speed enforcement revenues to fund municipal traffic safety programs, which includes the Vision Zero program. Vision Zero is a commitment to create safer streets for all, whether walking, biking, driving, or taking transit, and regardless of age or ability. It is used around the world to eliminate all traffic fatalities and severe injuries while increasing safe, healthy, equitable mobility for all. Questions or comments, councilors? Councilor Lewis?
Mr. President, or Madam Chair, just a question on, I guess, where did we come up with the 7.7 million in revenue collected? How was that
Ms. Yara?
estimated?
Yes, Madam Chair and Councilor Lewis. So we are assuming about $9.6 million of revenues based on the amount of speed vans and all of that will be out there. We took 20% off the top of that just because we don't know as it gets implemented if we're going to get all of that revenue right away, as well as the fact that violators will be allowed to provide community service in lieu of paying their citation. So that's where the 7.7 million came from, Councilor.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I guess it's just, how's it calculated? Is it based on, I guess you get your speed vans and then an estimated, this many people are going to break the law in this area over this week? Is there like a percentage of people that, we have an estimated percentage of people that are driving the speed limit, and then an estimated amount of people that are going to break the law.
Okay.
So is that what we're doing?
Yeah, actually, Madam Chair, Councilor Lewis, it's actually based on just data that was given by the vendor who will be helping us implement this program. Mr. Muniz might be able to talk to this as well, but they are assuming about 8,000 citations a month for 12 months, and there's 10 units, so that would get you the $9.6 million based on the experience of the vendor that's been selected.
And Madam Chair, and what happens if we don't, if we appropriate this money and then we don't get the amount of lawbreakers that we hope to get? What happens, where do we get the money to be, I guess we would.
Right, then,
explain that.
Madam Chair and Councilor Lewis, in that case, we just have to make sure that we maintain expenditures in line with what the revenues are coming in on. Let me just tell you briefly, we think that after all of the costs and our share, the 50% share we have to remit to the state, there'll probably be about $2.9 million available after all of those costs. So I think Director Montoya will just need to work with us to track that as the funds come in. Of course, we would never allow them to go expend more than they have.
And Madam Chair, I think just because of the nature of how the revenues are collected and then how we spend the money, that was one of the reasons for the bill that we talked about that just required this account to be audited at an extra time throughout the year, which I think is just good practice because this is kind of a unique account, and it also has similar program had challenges and problems with the account in the past too. So I guess I also point out that in future years, I mean, if these cameras work, then what it means is that they should reduce violations. So we should have the assumption that if our program works, then behaviors in Albuquerque are going to get better, which will reduce the violations, which will reduce the revenue coming into this, which ultimately should reduce it by, pretty significantly in that regard. So, anyhow, thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilor Davis?
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I agree with Councilor Lewis. Yeah, I just want to reiterate my my ongoing opposition to photo law enforcement, period. I think all the issues he raised are good ones. I realize that the revenue here has already been appropriated in the budget for Vision Zero programs, and those are all worthy. I just have concerns that that we should not, one, we shouldn't be doing this, though I think it will still, this amendment will still pass. But I do want to ask if someone knows, and if not, we'll get this somewhere. Now that we have a contract with a vendor, who is responsible for collecting uncollected, unpaid fees? If they didn't show up for service and didn't pay their $100, who does it? Like, at some point last time, we wrote off millions in uncollected fines.
Yeah, Madam Chair and Councilor Davis, you're actually right. We unfortunately had to write off a little over $2 million from the last program. You know, the DMD is going to, and the vendor will do their best to collect that money. After that, it falls on our Treasury Division. We have contracts with collection agencies and that pursue those items for us. So we can, of course, that's always been the case. But hopefully with this new program, it'll be a little bit easier than the last time to collect those monies.
Madam Chair, could I ask, Mr. R, I missed just the first piece of what you said with these horrible microphones that we should also fund a new system for. What is the vendor responsible for doing that initial collection and the follow-up, or does that revert automatically to the city's bill collectors?
The vendor is responsible for the initial collections. They do the billing. They will probably do, I'm guessing, 2 to 3 attempts to collect that. And at that point, it will come to Treasury if it's not collected.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councilor Bassan. I vote against this because I don't like the program, but I like the use of the money, so.
Councilor Grout?
Madam Chair, you had mentioned that the revenue that you're anticipating includes 10 cameras. We only have 3 now. Have you taken that into consideration? When are we going to have all 10 cameras?
Madam Chair and Councilor Grout, I'm sorry, I was not aware that we only had 3 cameras. I kind of late to this game. We are not sure when we will get the other 7.
And Madam Chair and Councilor Grout, that's part of the plan, is to use some of the revenues to purchase additional cameras as the program develops. And but we'll get you that information and before the Monday markup.
Councilor Sanchez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is something that probably needs to be done, but then adding PSAs, I guess, needs to be done, and having a community safety division needs to be done. I'm kind of just still struck by awe that we don't have enough officers on the streets of Albuquerque, and that we seem to be deferring from adding police officers to adding PSA, speed enforcement, and community safety, instead of doing everything that we need to do to get officers on the streets. And I think it's very, very important that the administration, as well as the citizens of Albuquerque and even the police department themselves, hold themselves responsible for making sure that we get more boots on the ground. I think it's important that we address this, but it kind of misses some of the points. If you had officers with boots on the ground, you'd be able to pull over the felony warrant offender, the misdemeanor offender, the domestic violence offender, the armed robber. All of those things are very, very important, and they're still slipping through the cracks. Another thing that this project does is, once the citizens of Albuquerque and the mother that's going to get caught in the speed trap taking her child to school, once that happens, you're still going to be able to figure out where that speed area is and then slow down and then speed up right after it. That's what everybody does in Rio Rancho. I know exactly where those cameras are, and I make sure that I go slow through that area. So although I'm not the biggest fan of this, it's something that needs to be done. And again, I want to reiterate that I think that we need to do a little bit more to hold ourselves responsible to make sure that we get boots on the ground. Thank you.
Councilors, other questions or comments? Ms. Yara, is this going to make it so that we're another 7.7 unbalanced?
Madam Chair, no, this is actually its own fund, and it doesn't have anything to do with the general fund.
Thank you for the confirmation of that. All right. Counselors, all those in favor, please say yes and raise your hand. Yes. Wait, okay, that's, all those in favor, please raise your hand and say yes. Yes. Any opposed? All right, 7-2. We're going to move on to amendment number 14. This is myself by request. On page 13, after line 2, insert the following: operating grant funds 265, legal department success express. Remove $50,000. And on page 13, after line 6, insert the following: Section 4, that the following appropriations are hereby made to the capital program to specific funds and projects as indicated below for fiscal year 2022. This is going to be adding in the $50,000 from the state fund, and then we'll renumber subsequent sections as needed. I would like to move amendment number 14. There's a second from Counselor Davis. Any questions or comments, counselors? All right. All those in favor of amendment 14, please raise your hand and say yes. Yes. Any opposed? All right, moving on to amendment number 15. This is myself again by request on page 5, line 23, entitled Office of Inspector General, increase the amount by $14,000. This amendment will appropriate $14,000 for operational funding to retain outside legal counsel, staff training, and general supplies for the department. The department request was $20,000, of which $6,000 is already included in the committee substitute bill. I would like to make a motion to approve amendment number 15. There's a couple seconds on here. Counselor Sanchez. Okay. Counselor Sanchez with another second too, so thank you very much. Any questions or comments, counselors? All those in favor of amendment number 15, please raise your hand and say yes. Yes. Any opposed? All right, that passes on 9-0. Counselors, that brings us back to amendment AA. Do I have to make a motion to untable? Okay, I would like to make a motion to remove from the table. Sounds way better than untable. Amendment AA. We're gonna remove from the table and bring it back. And so I made the motion, Counselor Davis with a second. Lots of seconds. Counselors, I'm gonna go to our staff and oh, yeah, thank you. All those in favor of removing from the table amendment AA, please raise your hand and say yes. Yes. Any opposed? Okay, so now, counselors, I would like to go to staff and see what magic we were able to make happen.
Madam Chair, Councilors, so to kind of take us back to where we started, Amendment AA was attempting to find $3 million to make sure that we were able to pass this budget out balanced. The Amendment AA proposed to take $3 million from the affordable housing vouchers. There was some discussion about that before the tabling. I have some language written up that you could move as an amendment to that amendment that would look into a couple of departments in the city that are proposing to do significant staffing increases over the next fiscal year. The idea being that those departments, it's unlikely, just from practical perspective, that by mid-year the full staffing will be achieved within those departments. You'll have an opportunity to revisit additional staffing needs with your mid-year cleanup and make any adjustments as may be necessary. And so to that end, the amendment to Amendment 1 would be on page 3, line 13, entitled Field Response within the Albuquerque Community Safety Department. Decrease the amount by $1.5 million. Add a new paragraph number 2 to read on page 6, line 5, entitled One Stop Shop Planning Department. Decrease the amount by $1.5 million. The Albuquerque Community Safety Department was proposing new staffing of approximately 70 new employees, if my memory serves from our discussions previously. And so to the extent that even half of those could be filled by mid-year, you would have the opportunity to revisit funding any additional for that department at that time. The planning department, in addition, was also proposing several new staff positions. Memory serves as approximately 27. And so again, those are very big staffing goals to meet, as much as they are needed. To the extent they can be met in one fiscal year, you would have the opportunity to revisit those later.
Thank you, Mr. Melendres. Counselor Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before we move that amendment, or unless someone else wants to, which makes sense to me, at least, I mean, to be transparent, at least to balance our budget for today and leave those on discussion for Monday. I would like to ask the administration if they're okay with, like, what are their thoughts on that, or if they have another alternative here, or what do we do? I'm looking, Madam Chair, would love to have a placeholder that makes it clear we want to hold our vouchers harmless and gives the administration and the council time to work through this little, in $1 billion budget, a very small rounding error before Monday.
Madam Chair and Councilor Davis and councilors, may I make one suggestion? There are some other structural issues that we'd like to sit with you all to negotiate and discuss between now and the final passage. And so with this tonight, with the amendments that you all just moved, we actually added another $500,000 of deficit to the 3 that was already at the beginning of this amendment. There are a couple of areas where we believe that we can make some adjustments, and certainly what Mr. Melendres proposed is worth having the conversation and to look and see if we can't make those adjustments. It is true, filling positions is a challenge, and there may be some savings in those programs, but there's also some cuts in some programs here that we would like to have a conversation, and with the council. We've got some cuts in the Office of Equity and Inclusion that are important. These are positions that provide a lot of work in our community. They were grant funded. They were cut out of the budget as best we can tell from the committee substitute. There are funds in Parks and Recreation that were significant, and we're talking about positions that actually clean and maintain the parks. Not necessarily management positions. These are just the basic positions that keep all our parks clean and green, if you will. And then there's some positions in the engineering section of DMD that were part of the cut. And I understand the logic that was used in looking at vacant positions, but some of those positions, the very positions you all supported last year in the budget, to have them restored and even actually to increase their pay, because we were interested in trying to get projects out the door. And so I don't know that we can sit tonight and take all of your time in looking at all those, but look, in the spirit of cooperation, I commend Councilor Bassan and the staff. I think for the most part, this budget is a good budget. There are some minor tweaks that we need to do, and I'd like to suggest that maybe we move the budget bill to the full council without recommendation, if that's your prerogative, obviously, and give us an opportunity to sit with the council staff over the next day or so and make the adjustments where I think we can work with you all and come up with a budget that we can all support. And so, at least from my perspective, I just think that may be the most prudent thing to do, or we're going to be here for a period of time, and whenever we get to this point, obviously, we'll make errors anyway. So, and then there's a couple of technical adjustments that I know that the budget office has, where I think there may be some additional duplicate areas that we can adjust, all in the spirit of trying to get a budget we can all work with.
Councilor Davis.
Thank you, thank you, Madam Chair, and Mr. Real, and to our staff. I want to make a recommendation to make this a little cleaner until we get, so that we can get a balanced budget today and don't stay here till midnight, because we've kind of overplayed that hand a little bit lately. Mr. Muniz and Mr. Real and Madam Chair, would it be acceptable to do an amendment, I'm not offering it, but an amendment to the amendment that would do the $3 million from risk fund for now, because I believe we do have a little there to play with, that's a one simple fund instead of us trying to plus and minus a bunch of different departments on the fly, and then pass this tonight to full council with a commitment that we need to revisit that so that we can restore it or replace it or do whatever technically in the meantime. Just seems to me it'd be a whole lot easier to do this with one appropriation from a fund that has an excess balance for the moment, so that we don't have to play favorite departments or favorite programs here right now. Is there balance in there for us to do this $3 million from that for the moment?
Madam Chair and Councilor, we certainly would be fine with that. I think the only caveat is that it would be a one-time fix, because it would be a one-time transfer, if you will, from the risk fund, but certainly would balance the budget as it relates to the programs, but we could come back on Monday and make an adjustment if necessary.
However you want it, however Madam Chair wants to do it. I just want to try and keep it simple.
Counselor Benton? Counselor Benton, I'm sorry. I thought you had wanted to comment. I'm sorry. No?
I guess since you called on me, there was another, we have, you mentioned, Mr. Rael, cuts in DMD, engineering and project management, which is a critical need, and in fact, something that it may become even more difficult going forward in the future. And was there some sort of, I wasn't aware of this until recently, but a cut to the environmental health, the mosquito control program? That's a pretty big deal right now down in the valley.
Madam President, or Madam Chair, excuse me, and Counselor, the management position in the urban biology program has been vacant, and it's an important position because it obviously manages the staff. And we've been attempting to fill that position, and so that position was also, again, one of the positions that was in the cleanup process, and certainly a position that's been a challenge to fill. But that would be one of those other technical amendments that we'd like to look at and see if we can find revenues elsewhere.
All right, but the mosquito control program is still continuing. It's just that it lacks leadership. To say,
the mosquitoes will be in charge until someone is in charge of them.
The guys spraying are in charge.
Yes, we'll have people out there for sure.
All right. And then there were also 20 security guards in transit. I know that those are hard positions to fill. Where are we with that and our ability to fill those? That was also part of the cut.
Again, Madam Chair and Councilor Benton, I think the cuts, as we looked at the number of employee cuts that were, or positions that were left, that were basically eliminated with the funding structure, there's about 20 security guards is what I somewhere in that vein. Some come out of the direct program for transit. And so, you know, we try and recruit for those positions. They're a challenge to fill, and when we do fill them, they're even more of a challenge to keep in some cases. But as we're trying to, you know, provide security for all the facilities and the programs, like in particular in transit, it's either we use security guards or we contract or we use APD. In this particular case, we've tried to use security guards, and we're continuing to try and to recruit those, but they all are hard to fill. And whereas I think the cut that was proposed in the budget to eliminate some positions or some of the funding for those positions, we can live with some of that. That seems like a pretty deep cut to me. And so again, if we can find another place to make this work, we'd be interested in doing that.
Well, Madam Chair, I do support us trying at least between now and Monday to see where we can get. Very worried, concerned about our parks. I mean, it's already hard for them to keep up with the amount of turf that they've got to maintain, just basic maintenance of park grass that everyone loves to play on. And again, just to reemphasize DMD, that's a larger discussion we're going to have to continue to have about filling those positions and the ones in planning as well. So I think the thinking about perhaps a half-year reevaluation of those vacancies is probably some good thinking, but let's see if, I would support kicking the can for a couple more days until Monday and see what we can work out.
Thank you, Counselor Benton. And just to clarify on that, and then if this is relevant to that, Counselor Lewis, if you're okay with that, and then I'll get to your questions. But the positions that were cut were 700 days vacant or more. At the very least, if I'm not saying that accurately, they should be more than 600 days vacant. And the transit security was not fully cut; it was cut by half, so it still leaves half of the available vacancies left with that. So either way, also with mid-year. But I certainly value and definitely know that DMD and the engineers, we need more, and I want to help our teams out there as well. However, this position was showing up as vacant for kind of in the threshold that I thought was relevant to look at cutting. Counselor Lewis.
And Madam Chair, and just so I'm following this, so Councilor Davis recommended possible amendment, I think, might move that balances this with the risk fund. And then essentially what that would be doing too is just taking off the table so tonight we would be saying that the vouchers is not something that we're going to, we're removing that, taking that off the table as an option for balancing the budget. And then I understand, Ms. Rail, that, I think you responded mainly to Mr. Melendez's proposed amendment and looking at some possible other options to that. And so I would support that, and I think mainly, it does give us time to have that discussion, have something else on Monday, but I think the main thing that we just take off the voucher option there.
Counselor Davis.
You're tired of me, I know, Madam Chair, but it sounds like we might have some agreement here. So I'm going to make a motion that we amend Amendment AA with, I'm sorry, go ahead. Whatever this is, Amendment 1, to wherever we're going to do this out of a risk assignment up to $3 million. We'll let staff figure out the technical language. I realize on paper that actually comes out of each department in a different way, but at least for this, to balance the budget, let's just change this to decrease the amount by $3 million from taking from risk fund, allocated across departments as needed, with the direction that we're going to revisit this on Monday. I'm not sure what the technical is but that's what we want to do.
Madam Chair, Councilor Davis, I think you stated that correctly, that the risk amount that we're talking about is spread around through several different places. So with that general amendment, if you want to move that today, and that gets you, the revenue that's needed to take a balanced budget out of committee, if we need to do cleanup to specify the specific places for that on Monday, or work further to find some other way to supplement that, that will be a possibility.
Madam Chair, that would be correct, and my intent, I think, would be that that we would rescind this amendment on Monday and replace it with a more technical cleanup that would do this in a better way with some conversation with the administration. But I would move that amendment to the amendment.
Counselors, a second? There is a motion and a second to amend the amendment number 1. Counselor Feeblecorn.
I just wanted to clarify, I didn't do the math that Mr. Rael did, but with all the other amendments that we've done, doesn't this number need to be 3.5 million?
Counselor Feeblecorn, the $3 million in lieu of the last minute rush for making some changes in order to do this, there should be, and I would like staff to please confirm, let us know if there is enough with the $3 million to cover the additional, I believe it was $500,000 that was said earlier that we've made in amendments. Is that $3 million still going to cover that?
Chairperson, based on our conversations right before this meeting, the $3 million, we should have enough. I believe it was just over $2 million what we were showing as short. And so based on that and the $500,000 they said that we're now also over, we should have enough to cover it based on that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Muniz. I just want to make sure that there's no objections from anywhere else as well, so that we're all on the same page. Okay, thank you. So any other questions or comments, counselors, on the amendment to the amendment? Okay, we will, those in favor of amending amendment number 1, please raise your hand and say yes. Yes. That passes on a 9-0 vote. Okay, so we're going to move on to amendment number 1 as amended. Any further questions or comments? All right, so those in favor of amendment number 1 as amended, please raise your hand and say yes. Yes. Any opposed? That passes on a 9-0 vote. Thank you all for joining me on that ride and helping out with everything. So now we are going to move on to discuss we can discuss it further. We're going to move on to the committee substitute as substituted and amended. Any new questions or comments? Counselor Davis.
I know I talk too much. Madam Chair, the motion on the floor, I believe, is a due pass. I might ask that because we still have some cleanup to do, I'd like to make a motion that we amend the motion to a no recommendation to get us to Monday so that we still have time to do those things. And then hopefully we get an immediate action as well. Motion for,
Stand by real quick, Counselor Davis. Is that, I'm happy to just change my motion.
Madam Chair, you made the original motion for do pass. It was seconded by Counselor Pena. If you'd like to amend your motion to no recommendation, and if the seconder concurs, that'd be the cleanest path.
I would like to amend my motion to a motion without recommendation. Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Pena?
Madam Chair, I just want, because I know that, we're trying to get all our work accomplished this evening, and I know we have this, but just wanted to say that I have one other item and a few objectives that I wanted to put in the budget, and I had given to the staff, and unfortunately, we weren't able to get them all done today, so we'll be presenting those on Monday.
Thank you, Counselor Pena. I imagine, well, we all know we're going to have more amendments on Monday. So we will be anticipating that. I do want to say thank you to the administration for working with us. Thank you to staff for working hard. Clearly, this was not totally streamlined, and it was definitely a learning experience. So thank you all for your support and for the cooperation. Yes.
And Madam Chair,
Counselor-
we
or-
want to thank you as well and the staff for working with us. I would be remiss if I didn't make one other comment that I think is important just for you all to think about over the course of the weekend. There's also some one-time cuts in some of the programs in both parks and in arts and culture. And there are a lot of folks that are watching these these cuts and, well, watching this process, I should say. So I including the mayor. And so I want to just make sure that I let you all know, part of the conversation also is defunding some of these programs that are important for the community because we funded them before. And I realize that it is all you all's prerogative to make those choices, but there are some other programs that were zeroed out in this preparation of this substitute that may come back, but we'll certainly bring those to you on Monday as potential amendments as well.
Thank you, Mr. Rael. We will have a very exciting meeting for all of you to come back and tune into on Monday. Those in favor of committee substitute 24 as substituted and amended, please raise your hand and say yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, anybody opposed? All those opposed? 1. Okay, so this passes on an 8-1 vote. And I would like to make a motion for immediate action. There's a motion and a second for immediate action. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. That passes on a 9-0 vote.
Madam Chair,
Counselors, yes.
if
Mr.
you don't mind, in light of that vote on immediate action that passed 9-0, I think the record was a little bit unclear with respect to the vote for immediate action on item O2224, which was the solid waste rate bill. The motion for immediate action actually failed on that bill. It seemed like it was announced as having passed, but it would have required a unanimous vote by this committee. So that bill will show up on your agenda on June 6th.
Thank you, Mr. Melendrez. Sorry, and I apologize for that confusion. Okay, so we're going to go back to item C. Counselor Davis?
Madam Chair, can I ask a procedural question now that we bring this up? Is the budget, I realize solid waste is an enterprise fund, but is the budget programmed assuming that rate passes, or is that an add-on later if?
Madam Chair, Councilor Davis, that money would still need to be appropriated, that would be generated from that source, and so it's not dependent.
Okay, great, just checking.
Okay. Counselor Lewis?
Oh, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I was going on to the next bill when you're ready.
We're almost there. Thank you. Thank you, Counselor. Okay. So now moving on to agenda item C, Counselor Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is the, so there's a committee substitute. Do I just move the committee substitute? Let me ask the staff on that. Do we need to move the original bill first and then the committee sub, or I guess what's the procedure on that? So, okay, so I move, let me just ask for clarification on that.
Madam Chair, Councilor Lewis, is the way that they're listed on your agenda, we would have to deal with the ordinance first. And that is not the bill that would need to be substituted. It's the resolution. So the resolution must follow the ordinance because there will be nothing to appropriate absent the ordinance. So,
So C just needs to be moved and discussed.
correct.
Okay.
Okay, well then I will move O25, authorizing the issuance and sale of the City of Albuquerque, New Mexico gross receipts tax improvement revenue bonds in one or more series in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $90 million to finance the cost of designing, developing, constructing, reconstructing, rehabilitating, renovating, modernizing, signing, enhancing, and otherwise improving certain capital improvements and paying expenses related to issuance of the bonds, providing for the payment of the Series 2022 bonds from certain gross receipts tax revenues, authorizing the taking of other actions in connection with the issuance and sale of the Series 2022 bonds. I would like to move a due pass.
Second.
There's a second from Counselor Benton. I will go back to Counselor Lewis, but I do want to recognize that it's myself, Counselor Benton, and Counselor Lewis that are co-sponsors. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows that we're all on this.
Madam Chair, what do we,
Counselor Lewis, I think, I'm sorry.
think we need to.
Even I was confused with the committee sub thing from before. So,
Right.
Counselor Pena, I believe, did you have an amendment to this one?
I did, but is it appropriate now? I thought we were taking a vote.
No, I'm sorry. I got confused again about the committee sub, which is actually for the resolution, not for the ordinance. So we want to move a due pass, but now if there's amendments, we need to go ahead and take votes on the amendments. So that way we can
Okay. thank
decide
you.
how to vote on it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this would be then amendment number 1, and this is on pages and lines 1 through 11, 3 through 10, 19.4, 19.24, well, at least 32, 25, and 63.7. Delete 90 million and insert in place thereof 100 million. This amendment increases the total bond amount by 10 million. This amendment will result in a title change that will require republication before final action on the bill. As a result, the soonest that the final action would be able to happen is June 6, 2022.
I'll second that.
And I guess I should explain because I think it's like the cart before the horse. So on the next bill, I know Councilor Davis is going to put in committee sub, but in addition to that, I know that one of the projects that was not included in that was the rail trails, and I think that that's just a real important project in our community moving forward. And I have an amendment to that to include 10 million for the rail trails.
Second.
That
was not a
yep,
motion.
We're not there yet.
Okay.
So we have Counselor Davis and then Counselor Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to just ask finance staff, or the sponsor, I think it's an easy answer, I just want to get it on the record. If we increase our capacity, how much GRT are we taking out of the general fund in order to fund the expanded capacity on the bonds? Or do we have this, basically?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'd go to Mr. Bakta.
Sure. Madam Chair and Councilor Davis, we are not actually increasing the capacity. If you recall, last year when we were trying to sell these bonds, it was because the overall debt service amount was freeing up, and that was used to kind of calculate how much it will get us. So last year, that amount was $100 million. Then, of course, due to the economic conditions, the interest rate went up. So our financial advisors used a different interest rate, and that using the same amount of debt service, and that kind of brought the amount down to $90 million. We kind of evaluated that just this week, and the rates have somewhat stabilized, and he had used about 20 basis point higher rate than what we will actually pay if we issue the bonds within a month or two. And that kind of created some capacity. And also, as you just saw that in our revenues, we revised our growth rate based on the Bieber's number, which came out last Friday. So our growth rate was 3.7%, and now it is 5.6%, which is still lower than what Beaver is projecting, but we have, we are comfortable with this higher growth rate. That would create some delta in the state shared GRT. So there are two favorable things here. One is reduction of 20 basis point in our projection of the interest rate that we will pay, plus the increase in the growth that should pay for this $10 million extra capacity.
Thank you, Mr. Bogta. I understand that. I just wanted to be sure we were clear. We weren't just making up another $10 million. I always think it's crazy that we can just recheck our math another day on the markets and find another $10 million under the bed cushion. But here we are, and I think it's an excellent project, and I look forward to supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Counselors, any other questions or comments? Counselor Lewis?
I just didn't completely, let me just say it again, Madam Chair, just so the administration is recommending $100 million is something that is possible and that we can do. So is that what you're saying?
Madam Chair and Councilor Levis, yes, we are comfortable
Right, you were saying
that
that.
we will not have to dig into our existing commitments. I think just the change in the interest rate and the growth in the GRT will pay for this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Counselors, any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Counselor Lewis.
so just the question about the timeline. Yeah. So would you all, I guess, would our staff explain the timeline a little bit more detail there? What this would need to go through, what all three bills would need to go through, and if that would.
Madam Chair, Councilor Lewis, with respect to this bill, since it is an ordinance, we have publication requirements that we would need to meet. And so the next step would be obviously for this committee to dispose of the bill and send it out to the council at some point in time with a title change that would occur because of the bond amount changing from 90 million to 100. We would have to republish that title. And so the next step would be for the council to essentially move this out of committee. It could not move with immediate action. And so it would appear on your agenda on June 6th, and that would be the opportunity for you to finally act upon this bill. The appropriation resolution that's related would have to track with that.
Madam Chair, this would just skip one full council meeting.
Madam Chair, Councilor Lewis, that's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Melendez, piggybacking off of that, in the ordinance, it says that if we have a supermajority vote for this in favor, that we will go ahead and execute it within 5 days of passing. But then if there's only a majority, that this will go on the ballot in November, which going to what Councilor Lewis was saying, I just want to clarify, and I know that I see the clerk here as well, but I want to clarify that by putting this at June 6th meeting, that we won't be missing any deadlines that will prevent us from being able to put this on the ballot should we get to that point.
Madam Chair, Councilor Bassan, not any that would be in play otherwise, if that makes any sense, because you would still need to authorize a question for the election, and you could not do that on Monday as it is now. And so we would prepare an election resolution recognizing that, I mean, if this would have happened on May 16th, and we would have had the opportunity then to see what the vote was and then prepare an election resolution, we can get that resolution prepared and sort of track it simultaneously just in case, and we'll work with the clerk to see what those timelines are to get that to the county for potential inclusion on the ballot for the general election in November.
So we'll be okay. I mean, I'm really hoping we get 9 votes on this anyway, so we don't even have to worry about it. However, if for some reason we only get 5 votes or 6 votes, that's true, knock on wood. He just said not to jinx it. That, you know, I just want to make sure that with the timeline and making sure that we get the question to the clerk and all of that, that we will have enough time before whatever deadline that is, whatever date that is, so that we don't end up in a corner.
Madam Chair, Madam Chair, we will circle back with the city clerk immediately after this meeting or tomorrow. I'm not sure if Ethan has an answer for the timeline on that today. If he does and he can offer it, that'd be fantastic.
Thank you, Mr. Melendez. Mr. Clerk?
Members of the committee, I believe we'd have to get, I would encourage the committee to get the questions to the county clerk by early summer or midsummer. I think that would be plenty of time. I believe the deadline falls early August. I don't have the exact deadline, but I think with if the committee was able to get this, or if I was able to get this to the county clerk by early August, I think that would be fine.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk, for that clarification. Thank you, Mr. Melendez. I plan on going on vacation in July, so that makes me feel better to hear that and have some reassurance. Any other questions or comments, counselors? Okay, so we are going to vote on Amendment 1 for O2225. All those in favor of the change, please raise your hand and say yes. Yes. That passes on a 9-0 vote. See, we just got to keep this momentum. All right. So moving on back to O25 as amended. Counselors, any additional questions or comments? Seeing none. Oh, okay. We're good? Okay, so we will move on to a vote for O25 as amended. Counselors, all those in favor, raise your hand and say yes. Yes. Okay, that passes on a 9-0 vote. Agenda item D. Hey, Counselor Benton, you want to do this one?
Sure. Council Resolution R34 is amending the adopted capital implementation program of the city by approving new projects from the proceeds of City of Albuquerque GRT Revenue Bonds Series 2022. I move a due pass.
I will second that. Counselors, questions or comments?
And again, this is the accompanying resolution that we're going to keep on the same track is our intention.
Okay. And then there's a committee substitute that we're going to move. Counselor Lewis.
Thank you, Madam President. Do we move this substitute before we vote on that, right? Okay. So, Madam Chair, I move the committee sub.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Counselor Lewis, do you want to explain or we're good?
Yeah, I mean, councilors, there's the committee sub is in your iPads as well as a hard copy and just a revised version from our last meeting that updates some of the projects that are on this that are on the program.
Counselors, any questions or comments on the committee substitute? Okay, so we're going to vote on the committee substitute. No, we'll vote on the committee sub and then the amendment. Thank you. So all those in favor of committee substitute, please raise your hand and say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, that passes on a 9-0 vote. Now, Counselor Pena, you have an amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this would be amendment number 1, and it states on page 1, line 10, delete 90 million and insert in place thereof 100 million. On page 2, line 6, insert the following: Albuquerque Rail Trails Series 2022 GRT bonds, 10 million. This amendment appropriates an additional 10 million in the GRT bonds to the Albuquerque Rail Trails project.
Second.
There is a amendment 1. There's a motion and a second. Counselors, any discussions or comments?
Madam Chair, if I may really quickly just to clarify, this amendment was written in anticipation of the bill before substituted. And so we will make a technical clarification. I don't think you need an amendment, but it will be page 2, line 14, where this new insertion will occur, just in case people are following along.
Thank you, Mr. Melendez. Counselors, questions and comments? All right. Those in favor of Amendment 1, please raise your hand and say yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right, that passes on a 9-0 vote. We're going to go back to R34 as subbed and amended. Counselors, any further discussion or comments? Questions? All right. Can I jinx it yet? No, just teasing. All right, all those in favor of R34 as substituted and amended, please raise your hand and say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, that passes on a 9-0 vote. Well, we're moving on to agenda item F. R25 is establishing a one-year objectives for the city of Albuquerque in fiscal year 2023 to meet 5-year goals. I move it to pass.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Counselors, there are some amendments, so hang on.
Chairperson?
Yes.
Just wanted to clarify, we anticipated amendments for this bill, but none came through, and we expect those to be on Monday. So.
Okay, good. Well, I thought I misplaced something in this, so thank you very much. So there are no amendments. Counselors, any questions? Staff, administration? Questions on this? Nope. Okay, so there are no amendments. Those in favor of R25, please raise your hand and say yes. Yes. Any opposed? One in opposition, so I think that passes 8-1, if I'm correct. All right, I would like to make a motion for immediate action to R25. There's a second, motion and a second. Those in favor of immediate action for R25, please raise your hand and say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed? All right, so that passes on a 9-0 vote. Well, you all have your homework to do, and we will see you on Monday. This meeting with no further business is adjourned.
One more thing.
Oh.
I just wanted to thank the city security. Someone walked in and actually placed an unknown item on the desk there, and they got it taken care of really quick. So I wanted to say thank you.
Thank you very much.